If you think prison is a place where criminals are reformed and rehabilitated, think again. Some of the most dangerous and violent inmates in the world are locked up behind bars, and they will stop at nothing to cause mayhem and terror. Here are 10 of the most dangerous prison inmates that will give you nightmares. Number 10. Charles Manson. Manson was an American cult leader who led a group of followers known as the Manson Family to commit a series of murders in 1969. The murders were characterized by their brutality and violence, and Manson was sentenced to life in prison. Number 9. Ted Bundy. Bundy was an American serial killer who murdered at least 30 women in the 1970s. He was known for his charming personality and his ability to manipulate his victims. Bundy was sentenced to death and executed in 1989. Number 8. John Wayne Gacy. Gacy was an American serial killer who murdered at least 33 men and boys in the 1970s. He was known as the Killer Clown because he often performed as a clown at children's parties. Gacy was sentenced to death and executed in 1994. Number 7. Pedro López. López is a Colombian serial killer believed to have murdered over 300 people. He is known as the Monster of the Andes because he targeted young girls in the Andean region of South America. López was sentenced to life in prison but released in 1991 after serving only 20 years. Number 6. Luis Garavito. Garavito is a Colombian serial killer who murdered over 100 children in the 1990s. He is known as the Beast of the Andes because he targeted street children in the Andean region of South America. Garavito was sentenced to 18 years in prison but released in 2018 after serving only 22 years. Alright, let's pause for just a moment and ask you to make sure to subscribe to our Top 10 channel and then tap on the bell icon. So, go ahead and hit those buttons. Now, let's dive into our number 5. Number 5. Anatoly Onoprienko. Onoprienko is a Ukrainian serial killer who murdered over 50 people in the 1980s. He is known as the Butcher of Rostov because he committed most of his murders in the Rostov Oblast of Russia. Onoprienko was sentenced to death and executed in 2002. Number 4. Dmitry and Natalia Baksheev. The Baksheevs are Russian serial killers who murdered at least 30 people in the 1990s. They were known as the Couple of Satanists because they were involved in occultist practices. The Baksheevs were sentenced to life in prison. Number 3. Yang Xinhai. Yang is a Chinese serial killer who murdered over 67 people in the 1990s. He is known as the Monster of the Yellow River because he committed most of his murders in the Hunan province of China. Yang was sentenced to death and executed in 2000. Number 2. Pedro Rodrigues Filho. Filho is a Brazilian serial killer who murdered over 100 people. He is known as the serial killer of Pedrópolis because he committed most of his murders in the Pedrópolis municipality of Brazil. Filho was sentenced to 400 years in prison, but he is expected to be released in 2027. Number 1. The Eyeball Man. The Eyeball Man Jason Barnum was sentenced to 22 years in prison for shooting an Alaska police officer. Barnum's offenses were driven by a serious heroin addiction, reports The Independent. What made him seem even more dangerous was his tattoo-filled visage. Barnum had one of his eyeballs completely tattooed. And that's a wrap for today. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button hard and give this video a fat thumbs up. Before we go, we'd love to hear from you. Which of these serial killers captures your attention the most, and why? Feel free to let us know what you think. Stay awesome.